This is Chris Detzel, and
I'm Michael Burke.
welcome to Data Hurdles. Let's conquer these hurdles together. Welcome to another Data Hurdles. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Michael Burke. How you doing, Chris?
pretty good, man. How about you?
Good, good. It's a beautiful day outside. It's Friday. I'm happy. It's been an incredibly busy week for me, so I'm happy to have a nice weekend to unwind a little bit. How about yourself? Do you have any running planned?
Yeah, probably run about 20 miles this weekend, one on Saturday, some
Amazing.
on Sunday. And it's very nice here right now, but we are in a wind alert. Like there's going to be potential fires here in Dallas or Texas. We'll see, but lots of wind today, I think. So
Oh, that's really exciting.
today we have special guest, Nishith Trivedi. And Nishith is from Pfizer, and he's the Enterprise Data Governance and Global MDM lead. Nishith, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Good,
Good to
man.
see
It's
your
been a
chat.
while. Yes.
Yeah.
I was really
I
excited.
think the
that
last time we saw each other was at the roundtables, right? The executive roundtables at Reltio, maybe.
I
It's
think,
been a lot.
yeah, I think,
Yeah,
was it in Dallas or?
yeah,
Yeah.
the Dallas Sync Up. That's right. Chris Detzel, you put that together.
Yeah, I did many of those
You, me, and
things. Yeah.
Danny. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then I met Chris at the Gardner DNA in Orlando as well. So.
that's right.
That's right.
And I've seen you several times. Last year at the data, what is it? The data conference that Reltio puts on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did it-
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Data driven.
Yeah, it's been great working with you over the years, and certainly we're excited to have you on. So today we want to dive into who you are, what you're doing over at Pfizer, and just get your journey. So let's dive in and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Pfizer, and we'll go from there if that's fair.
Sure, happy to. So again, my name is Nishith Trivedi. As you mentioned, Enterprise Data Governance and Master Data Management at Pfizer. We are part of the AI data and analytics practice as part of digital. So we're basically a data horizontal. We cover all verticals. So I work with not just commercial, but everything from our supply chain, manufacturing, to finance, legal, HR, R&D, etc.
That's a lot of verticals.
Yeah, it's fun. I came from a commercial world, so there's a lot of kind of new challenging areas to work with. And as part of my journey, started out at Pfizer in a master data management. I came from consulting. My background has been traditional data management, so BI, data lakes, data warehouses, MDM. And so I joined as the MDM lead, and then in 2023, March 2023, so essentially 2 years ago, I got expanded opportunity to take also over data governance, enterprise data governance. And what that means, data governance means different things to different people. But from our perspective, it's the collaboration platform for data governance. It's ontologies, knowledge graphs, preference data management, metadata management, data stewardship, and then data governance council. So it's a lot of stuff. And considering various verticals, we have a lot of different initiatives right in the pipeline. So exciting space.
And how did you get into the data space? I know it's such a different journey for everybody. Was it something that you had planned like since college, or did you stumble upon it?
No, I think I joined college originally as a chemical engineer, but I realized very quickly that I didn't want to spend my life in factories, like in chemical factories in the middle of nowhere. So I did shift over to management information systems in college. And so I graduated with that. I went into consulting. And so essentially what I learned in college and what I learned in consulting was really just data management, helping. In consulting, I worked across various industries, right? So I was in DC metro area for a while, so a lot of federal government, U.S. Postal, U.S. Navy, USDA, as well as large Fortune 100 clients, parts of the world, Verizon Wireless. So a lot of data management, and then got into BI because once you get into data lakes, data warehouses, you get into BI, and once you do that, right, master data management, I started, I think, in late 2014 or 2015, working with Reltio, a little bit with Informatica as well, but I have a very strong relation with Reltio, which is when I met both of you. And then that translated to jumping over to industry, right? And when I got opportunity at Pfizer.
I can't tell you how common it is that we see this life cycle of people that have been in the data space forever. They started off in another industry. They had this kind of golden view of seeing like the customer facing data sets in the space. And slowly they work through that pipeline until they end up in the depths of the serving layer. I feel like that's where all the experts reside in these systems, that they end up owning large enterprise systems that feed the rest of the business. Huge amount of complexity and orchestration associated with those platforms. Really interesting story. And Do you think that if you looked back on today's self from your younger years, would you have seen yourself here in this role in the MDM space?
No, you're a chemical engineer. No way.
Uh, I don't know exactly, but I think definitely like it's a very exciting space to be. I'm a data nerd. I do enjoy just
Yeah.
solving problems, right? Coming from consulting is all about solving problems, giving
Always.
tangible results. I never wanted to be just a pure strategy consultant where I'm giving decks and recommendations walking away. So always implementing and making sure we see through to the business outcome. So I do appreciate that. And then I have to say, moving from just at Pfizer only the MDM to now owning various components. And when I joined, to be honest, like the team, the catalog team, the Elation team and the Calibra team are two different teams at the point in time. Now we combine them. And then the reference management and MDM team did work together. So there was some synergy, but for the most part, like the ontology team worked separately, knowledge graph team worked separately, the catalog team and MDM team, like probably don't even know each other. So now my challenge has been, hey, how do I build that team culture? And then more importantly, how do I make sure that these capabilities, right, MDM reference to metadata, ontology, knowledge graph, catalog, they're basically coming together. The whole is better than the sum of the parts, right? That's been one of our challenges, but it's also the exciting part. I have to say right now, like now that I've gotten deeper into each of these areas, we do see many different patterns, right? You can see, for example, now
Yeah.
specifically with the Gen AI and the agentic AI stuff, right? Like you really need AI ready data. And what does AI ready data mean, right? Obviously from interconnectivity, right? Like all these different data sets and different data lakes need to be interconnected for structured data. Now for unstructured data, you
Yeah.
don't have MDM, right? That's where knowledge graphs come in. That's where ontologies come in. Scientific articles. We have lab notes from bench scientists. We have clinical trial documents, right? Coming out of principal investigators or their handwritten stuff or lab written stuff. We have lab notes. We have lab EMR, EHR kind of data. And being able to stitch together multiple unstructured data together using ontologies. We basically have various kind of semantic technologies, like named entity recognition, optical character recognition, voice, audio translation to kind of text, and applying metadata tags to that, and then taking that metadata tags, putting into knowledge graph, and then being able to do graph rag, and then your LLM can call that. Right? Like, you really need to combine a whole bunch of different technologies together, and that's the challenge, and that's the exciting part right now. Is well, when I was just doing MDM, it was great because we supported enterprise MDM, supported marketing, medical. But now we're truly saying, hey, it's not just for structured transaction data, but now it's unstructured data. We're helping with content generation. We're helping with knowledge mining. So it's really opened up kind of the opportunities.
I don't know if I gave you this update before the call, but I've actually switched to Databricks, if you know the company.
Of course, yeah. We're one of our R&D and clinical is a Databricks shop. So we work closely with them. And we're right now doing POC to connect a Databricks Unity catalog to our Calibra. So that way we have
Amazing.
one catalog that rules them all from a marketplace perspective.
And I'm at
Not, not trying
Zoom,
to,
so I don't know if you guys think about third-party data in that way. Do you work with sales folks? I wouldn't think that you would a ton, right?
With who?
Like sales folks, marketing folks, and all that kind of stuff.
No, that's
Yeah.
like my bread and butter. Right? I came from ZS, from consulting, which is a sales and marketing consulting company. That's my expertise is like sales and marketing, commercial, and MDM, of course, supports, right? Like from a customer perspective, right? Supported everything from sales reporting to IC to targeting, alignment,
Okay.
to medical CRM, sales CRM, marketing, messaging. So we do that. Currently, Pfizer, right, there's a big push to modernize our marketing technology, MarTech stack. So we're bringing in CDP technology so we can get better. Like when we have website visitors, right? Like not everybody. In fact, I think like it's in a single digits, like the number of known people who go to a Pfizer website, right? Whether it's a Pfizer.com, Pfizer
yeah.
product.com, or it's a brand website or even a therapeutic area website. Like most people could go in there, whether you're a patient, caregiver, or it's a HCP or some healthcare professional.
Yeah.
You go there, you look at data, you download it. Only in certain exceptions, I would say, or certain like things like sample ordering, you actually need to register to be able to run a transaction. But there's a lot of stuff you can go there without registering. So really, I think a single digits where we have known visitors to the websites and now using CDP, they want to basically increase 3x, 5x, whatever the percentage is, to have a
Yeah.
much greater help. And so from an MDM perspective, we're partnering with the CDP team and the marketing team of how do we help them go from the anonymous to partially identified to fully identified, and then from fully identified to that customer 360 view, which
Makes
will help
100%.
marketing campaigns.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see companies, especially like Pfizer, who is been traditionally more of a provider of things than a consumer or customer facing technology starting to pull back and realize that value, right? Of if they have this customer 360 view, what can they do? What can they learn? How can they make the experience better? Talking about large language models, I know you mentioned RAG and some of the development you're doing. How are you thinking about RAG in the long term across Pfizer, and especially from a servability perspective? The architecture is so much different than what you would see in your traditional structured data systems. How are you guys planning the long term? And again, I don't want to ask you too many questions about
Yeah,
specifics, but really interested to understand your vision and your take on the future.
sure. Of course, it's evolving technology, right? And as with Gen AI, every 2 weeks there's a
Yeah,
new DeepSeek and then et cetera. It's fast. I would say that probably the earlier iterations of RAG at Pfizer have been more vector RAG. And
yeah,
I would say that, of course, when the LLM came out, ChatGPT, Copilot, et cetera, like probably Q4 2023, and last year, from the executive level, right, the CEO basically told all his C-level people to have goals, right, and making sure like Gen AI is front and center for their goals and departments, right, and finding use cases. So at the at the highest level at Pfizer, right, that's been a priority of how do we make AI there. My leadership team, right, which used to be a senior VP of data analytics, is now a chief AI officer, right? So it's a named chief
wow,
AI officer, AI and analytics officer. So even from a role perspective, right, like they've brought in people who have that. And I think specifically to your question, right? The first generation was, hey, let's use LLM, and LLM, not that it's a silver bullet, but hey, let LLM do a lot of the RAG stuff for you. And when we got to complex clinical trial data, research data, omics, proteomics, genomics, stuff like that, you can't really just have your graph or your
yeah,
the LLM expect that it knows all the scientific stuff, right? It has all the knowledge about various genomes and gene sequences and gene assays and stuff like that. So now we're saying, hey, we really need to bring more context to LLM so that, hey, you don't want to hallucinate, and B, right, like you want to be better integrated with your terminology, right? Pfizer terminology, industry terminologies. My team owns the ontology, the platform called Sentry. And so we had all sorts of public plus internal Pfizer or public with the extended curated in extended duration of the things like gene ontology, protein ontology, things of that, Pfizer product, Pfizer departments, etc. We have a technology called for named entity recognition. And essentially think of it as, let's say you have a document, and I'll use a very generic term, right? Let's say the document has the word bat, and bat could mean a baseball bat or a sports ontology, or bat could mean an animal, right? Like the bird bat, right? Like when you read a document, how does your Gen AI know what context this word bat was? Because you can say, I have this metadata tag called bats in this document, but what is the context, right? So this is where the vocabulary and the name entity recognition will have rules on top of that. And the rules are things like, hey, the word bad is there. And then to the left and of that, if you have the word baseball, sports, like field, pitching, like then, okay, this is related to sports. And you basically go down this semantic path of sports ontology. If you have things like nighttime and cave and echo and so, okay, that's the bat and his animal, bird ontology, right? That kind of stuff, right? Like context behind looking at unstructured data, applying the right metadata tags, and ability to then take that into a knowledge graph, right? Where you say, okay, we have these documents, but we basically generating these specific ontology specific nodes. And then you can now, by looking at the different metadata tags, you can say, here's the inferred relationship between these nodes. Now you're building a much more richer graph, which will help you with your graph RAG. So I think
yeah.
like, evolution, your question is, hey, we went from vector graph to now going towards more graph RAG.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's so interesting in these areas of technology. And for folks that aren't as technical on the call, your LLMs and your chat GPTs, they have generalized context that works pretty well at
Yeah.
answering a large array of questions. But once you get to these edges of research and science, they do okay, but they won't understand the specifics of the questions that you're asking. And if they return any answers at all, they'll be pretty generic. And
Yeah.
so what Nisheth is talking about is by loading all of this additional research that they've structured in a way that's meaningful and contextualized, the machine learning model can give responses that cite specific research related to that problem. And this is where I think we're seeing a lot of evolution in the model of experts stage of LLM, where we have specialized models that are able to answer these questions better than any generalized model like a chat. How are you thinking about, and this is something I'm curious about, we'll pull back a little bit on the technical, even though I could probably talk to you for hours about this.
Quick question, because I'm a little curious around, you mentioned we got to try to stop the hallucinations. I feel like every LLM model hallucinates. Is there something that you could put in to say, don't speculate, don't do any of these things, like just use what the data shows or what we did for this?
To be fully honest, like I work on the foundational data, right? So we're
Okay.
supporting COE, which is actually, and we have our generalized LLM platforms. We use all of them, Claude, Bard, etc.
Yeah.
There's obviously the prompt engineering. There's ability to put parameters of how much to hallucinate. And if you're creating marketing content and you say, hey, I want some more flowery language, right?
Hallucinate.
A little bit more, be more creative. If it's
Too.
this document generation is for FDA documentation, like FDA filings for new drug, like you don't want any hallucination at all, right? So you can put some parameters there, but I think that as Mike was saying, ability to have context using like better metadata and better able to say it. If you ask a question of your data, you say, hey, can you tell me like the various scientific journals as well as clinical studies which have gene ontology for XYZ gene for this indication, then like ability to say, hey, like this indication, right, probably includes other synonyms, right? Or like this protein,
Yeah.
there's a different synonym of that, right? If you just have pure images or pure vector, you may just only know that term. But now with ontologies, we're saying, hey, this term is associated with this term, is associated with this term, it just spread out. And then also when it gives you return, it'll give you the link saying, hey, these are the 10 documents which we looked through. You can click on it and you can verify yourself that, okay,
Got it.
not just
Al-
anything context specific.
Yeah. Also, these new kind of multi-model approaches, they do things that are really interesting. There's reinforcement learning in them. So if 10 other people have been searching in a similar area and returned results that they liked and didn't mark those results as poor, then the model will get better and it will start recommending more in that area of research, right? When you ask a similar question. And then in addition to that, in the multi-model approaches, there's now models that do things like fact checking of the responses from the specific expert that returned that information. So it will need a citation and it will check that the citation is relevant with the synonyms in a reference. So there's these really cool, intricate ways that, models will always hallucinate to some degree, but that you can significantly limit those hallucinations and returning poor data.
Got it.
And it's becoming so powerful. It's becoming like more of a network of experts like you would see in a company. When you try to solve a problem, you don't just ask one person, you ask 10 people to collaborate and get back to you with a real answer.
And now it's basically a network of agents, right, with different models.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I think you can't stumble upon every second LinkedIn article about agentic AI. So that's the new buzzword.
Let's
And
go ahead.
just one more thing, because I think this is interesting. That's all. We could probably do a podcast just on this at some point. But
Yeah.
in the agentic AI space, one of the newest things that's coming out is this ability to test feedback from models. So like you have 100,000 people using this expert model, and all of a sudden you're getting feedback of what works and what doesn't. And you might need to change models. You might need to swap ChatGPT for Claude under the scenes as like your main system. How do you measure all the accuracy that's shifted in your environment? What happens when the models update? This whole framework almost becomes a more complex data problem. If you think of like your model as just another giant database, you're shifting systems. And so part of this agentic multi-model shift in the landscape right now is really focused around how can we create a better platform that controls and monitors and measures the accuracy and reliability of these systems. And that is so important. I think that is like coming, it's net new. Only a few companies are really adopting it, but it is something that in the next few years, you're going to see every company working on one of these platforms that helps measure data and accuracy of models this way.
So interesting. Nishith, how do you think about, you mentioned that it's the big buzzword is AI agents. What is that? Is that kind of the very kind of what Michael was talking about, expert type of models that are just specific experts in certain things? Or how do you see that
Right.
today?
I think there's obviously there's going to be all flavors of them, right? I don't think there's limited. So I think there's going to be each of our software vendors, right? So for example,
Mm.
Excel Data, right? Like as I mentioned, I spoke to Ramon and they announced a couple of weeks ago that Excel Data has this autonomous kind of agent kind of architecture coming. I'm sure Relative has it. I'm sure like ServiceNow is big into it. Salesforce
Yeah.
really pushed like, agents, right? And these are like, we're ServiceNow shop, we're Salesforce shop, right? So we'll have individual RSI vendors, right? The Accentures and Deloittes and IBMs and CS of the world, like they have their own kind of frameworks. And our job really is to say, hey, how do we bring all of this together, right? How do we build a cohesive agent framework, which will help us in multiple areas, right? So obviously, from a data quality perspective, we can have Excel data agent, right? I could be looking at various pipelines, versus it could be a data stewardship agent or MDM data quality, or versus we could have a right now we're trying to build automated metadata for Calibra and Elation and data catalogs, Unity catalog,
Yeah.
right? You can have 10,000 tables in your Databricks or Snowflake, and you want to bring that into your catalog, and you can get the technical metadata. But what are you really interesting is business metadata, right? How do you get the business terms and definitions, and how do you get more context? So when a business user is like looking at that for self-service BI, they understand what the data is, right? And nobody, I know I don't want to type in handwritten like for 10,000 tables, right? And all the problem what the actual metadata is. How do you pass it like as documents, right? Like design documents, your technical specs, your whatever it is, right? Like various documents. And you could have generate recommendations for metadata tags potentially over time as you build new enhancements to your data lakes, Databricks, etc. You can have agents say, hey, any new data comes in, right? Feed it like some documentation.
Yep.
Please recommend you some metadata tags, which you can add to your Unity cat or Calibra, etc. So various kind of very specific usage type agents will be there. But ideally we have one holistic framework which will guideline and version control and all of that versus 20 different places where
Yeah.
we have managing is difficult. So it's really right now we're trying to work towards right like that what that general framework is. And I think there's some it's a new space. So I think everybody's experimenting.
It's just another layer in the database model. I think that people think of it as something much more complex. But you think about it like if Salesforce and ServiceNow and everybody else is running their own agent and they're not connected to the same source of truth, you're going to have vastly different answers. And you've created agent silos, right? Which is going to be just as big of a problem as data silos. It is a data silo, right? And I think that's where the platform and the orchestration is becoming so important, is that we need to bring everything back to a centralized set of reference data and truths and ground truths that's been validated. And then at the end, we need to figure out, okay, all the inputs and outputs going between these agents, we need to track that and measure the value and accuracy and reliability of that system.
And we've been doing like things like robotic process automation, right? The last 5-10 years, right? So it's just basically the iteration of that, right? It's instead of
Yeah.
RP, adding Gen AI and other AI kind of elements to it. But it's really automating things which you could do either through rules or automating like manual steps which are repeatable, essentially.
So my
I
assumption
was,
is governance is pretty hardcore for Pfizer. You're in over 150 countries with different requirements and all of those things with the AI stuff going on, with a lot of other things going on. How do you think about that and manage it, and how to get people to adhere to these things?
Look, so first of all, I think from day one, I realized like that it is an impossible task, right? Like Pfizer's
Yeah.
fault, we have in our, what we call CMDB, the configurable management database, we have 3,000 applications, right? Which are registered technology application platform, a CRM, databases, data lakes, report.
amazing.
3,000. There's no way as an enterprise data governance I can govern 3,000, right? We already say, hey, we're not going to do everything, right? So how to be strategic. Now, our group as AI data analytics, right? Like we obviously own all the data lakes, right? The analytics tools. So that obviously would be a key area for me. And then as a chief data officer hat, right? What do you focus on? You focus on where the business value is. So you basically focus on where's the biggest bang for the buck, right? What is business priorities? So if the business right now is prioritizing on, let's say, better supply chain, right? If we want to make our supply chain more efficient. Right now, obviously, Pfizer purchased Seagen, right, for oncology drugs, right? So there's a lot of focus, a lot of investment
Yeah.
in oncology, and there's a initiative called Digital First Oncology. So anything around oncology and better data management oncology. That other vaccines is also important, of course, but
Sure.
oncology, they're doubling down there. There's things like in the clinical trial space, right? They want to basically have better like submission, right? Like how do we do document generation for better regulatory submissions and all that, right? So the document generation and knowledge mining of documents is very important. So focus on that unstructured stuff, which we're talking about, right? So we do have to pick our places, but we pick places where the business is betting on. And we basically say our job as a data team is to enable the foundational data and linking of that data together to make the data AI ready so they can help their processes or help their requirements.
With all
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to reply to the other part, which is the 100.
Go ahead, Nishith.
that,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned the 150 countries. The 150 countries. So There's obviously, as a life science kind of, it's a regulated industry. There's things where like Pfizer is really good at because we've just been doing it forever, right? Things
Yeah.
like GXP, good manufacturing practices, HIPAA for clinical trial data, like patient data or the clinical trial participants. That data is like blinded, right? Like very few people right outside of the global clinical supply can see who it is, right? So HIPAA compliance for like patient services and making sure
Yeah.
the company's firewall between patient services data can't go to patient marketing. So that stuff is like bread and butter because we've been doing it forever. And then there's all this reaction to new stuff, right? China PIPL, GDPR, of course, not new, 10 years old. China PIPL, for example, we had to figure out how do we react to that. And what happened was we said, hey, we're going to have a China team for China data. And so I had a person in my team who was my China MDM lead, and he actually got transferred over in the China data lake team, right? They got transferred over to the China data analytics team. So we are
Yeah.
not only SME and we support them from here's the type of platforms, here's integration, etc. But we don't have access to China data anymore. So China data, specifically HCP data, PI data, is in mainland China. We don't have access to it at Waldorf for PIPL purposes. We don't even have cross-border transfer ability to do that anymore. In that case, it's like a separate team, and we're not even governing them. We'll support them from a platform perspective, right? If they need a catalog or if they need tools and technologies, right? But they're managing, governing their data locally. In other cases like GDPR, and then there's obviously government stuff like GDPR, the California Privacy Act, or there's things which are contractual, right? We buy especially pharma data, especially
Yeah.
distributed data. There's specific contracts which say, hey, here's how you can use it, here's how you can. And then obviously, as Mike alluded to earlier, right? Like now we're more patient-centric. Like previously for pharma, customers were really doctors and hospitals. And now for pharma, we're also consumer-centric, right? So patients, consumers, caretakers, right? We have various digital apps. There's a Super Bowl ad for like the Pfizer for All is a website where you can go to and ask questions, almost like a WebMD where you can ask questions and give answers. Oncology specific, like Living for Cancer is a digital app for cancer patients. So there's obviously, because of consumer technology, and even for doctors, like there's a lot of consent management and preferences which they put in. And so being compliant to their data privacy, their consent, we will use these emails only for these purposes, right? If it's a doctor, like
Yep.
we will email them, like if it's an oncologist, only email them about cancer drugs. I don't send them emails about Paxlovid or COVID vaccine, something like that. So just being respectful of the consumer experience, making sure that we comply with contracts as well as laws, as well as consent.
Michael?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to say it's an amazing space to be in. And I think that from the outside, everyone kind of looks in, and even going into a lot of these new industries that I'm in, you're like, how hard can this really be? And you get under the hood and you're like, oh, there's 10,000 regulations that we have to follow for each data set. And no wonder the lift and shifts and migrations and transformations to some of these AI tools is so challenging, because your contracts might all be different on which one can actually leverage an LLM or which ones can interact with a RAG ecosystem. So it is an exciting space to be. How do you upskill your team and keep everybody learning and continuously accelerating with all of the change, especially with LLM, where I feel like the entire architecture, at least even from our perspective, this Databricks has completely changed year over year. Like it's evolving that quickly.
Yeah. I want to just quickly react the pharma industry and how unique it is, right? Like I think like when I first came, into the pharma life science consulting, like very early on realized that, hey, like the uniqueness is that compared to e-commerce where like the person who makes the purchasing decision is a person who pays for it, is a person who gets the thing. Over here, like the patient is getting the drug.
Yeah.
Really, the doctor who makes a decision on what to prescribe. In some cases, the doctor can't make the decision. As a provider who will say, hey, like for this type of drug, this is a standard of care, give this. The provider will make the decision based on sometimes the tiers of what the PBM, the pharmacy
Yeah.
benefit manager say, hey, this drug is in this tier, so we'll pay for it. And then obviously the distributors are the ones who take the data take the actual physical pills from pharma. McKesson, ABC Cardinal will take the data, they will send it to a CVS, and then the patient will go to CVS or Walgreens and pick it up, right? So the distribution is different, payment is different, the decision of who buys, who's going to pay for it, how much is going to be paid by insurance versus out of pocket, like all different, right? So compared to e-commerce where you can go to Amazon and you say, I want this, and you buy it and it'll ship it, it'll come to your house. Totally
Yeah.
different. So very data rich, but very complex. A lot of
And it's,
middlemen and a lot, the gross to net kind of, you can see in the politics of the day, right? Like the gross to net, how much is pharma gouging people? Is it really middlemen? There's all sorts of
yeah.
untransparent margin.
Even I didn't know this until recently, and I was talking to a consultant who specializes in just this, is medical coding. Like how complex, even from the doctor's perspective, there could be 100 different ways to code it, one procedure. And
Yeah,
depending on which codes you select is how you're billed and if your insurance covers it and what kind of medications are allowed for you. And that
absolutely.
in itself is a whole ecosystem, right? In the variability of how you're going to get charged and what you're going to get provided. So
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah. Going back to your original question of how do we upscale the team and myself, I think when I started out, as I mentioned, we had two teams. Technically, the one team was also so we had just the catalog people and the MDM people and the one ontologist and knowledge graphs, etc. And they were, this is my capability here. I'm the expert in that. And now I've tried to say, hey guys, for your own career growth and also for us to be able to be more cohesive, let's figure out how the platforms work together. And then also let's try to get some cross training. In terms of, we have people from my MDM team right now help on reference data management. My MDM team members helping on the Calibra catalog. We're doing some migrations of various teams from one catalog to another, things of that. I have people from the MDM team helping on Excel data and data quality, data observability. So there's specific things where I'm actually helping as part of their goals. I'm helping them get exposure to new technologies, new platforms, even new, in some cases, like people who work in commercial network and R&D, et cetera. So new domains. So that's one thing. Obviously, with the new AI technology, like we're still a foundational data team. So my goal is really getting data AI ready as opposed to doing the AI itself, right? We have AI COE and we have partners that we work with very closely who are experts in that. But I think everybody, like I think at the Pfizer AI, like we're part of AI analytics and data practice, right? Like from the leadership down, they're basically pushing for various education. So there's obviously all sorts of online classes or online opportunities, but really on the job training to me is the best one, right? Like I'll get bored like looking at Coursera after a while, but it's, hey, let's try to find these AI projects and let's try to like make a dent in it. Let's try to help them be a little bit better, right? Like could their recommendations have a little bit more context or their data be a little bit richer. I think that's where I enjoy it, the practical stuff. We're doing a lot of POCs, and I think in the AI world, that's how you learn, right? Is by doing
Yeah.
POCs. You can't go straight to production. You have to iterate. So just on the job learning, I would say more, and then cross, at least for the team, more cross training, ability to just see new areas. I think most people, like for their own career, they're excited to try new things.
especially the AI stuff. They have to. And so
Yeah,
it's
I
really
mean,
good that you
yeah, and I think everybody's worried, right? That hey, if you're gonna get left behind if you don't know it. So I think yeah, everybody has motivation, but I think it's also exciting. It's not just the negative part; it's also
oh, for
like,
sure.
with a cool shiny object, right? You want to play with it.
Well, and
Well,
it's
and
go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say the other thing is you have these groups like the data scientists who were doing traditional ML. Now you have these ML architects that have moved into the space specifically for large language models. And there's this kind of merge over now where it's less about the models that you're creating, which was more of a classic ML approach, still very relevant. And it's certainly a model of experts. It's going to be a mixture of experts. It's going to become even more relevant. But the LLMs is really more of a data problem, all right? Because you've got this product that you're just handed and you need to extend it with all of these intricate graph databases and vector databases and traditional data sets and unstructured data. And really, it's interesting that the data stewards and the heads of data and the MDM experts are now becoming the experts and helping accelerate the movement of these large language models. I think it's primarily because it is a data structure problem more than it is a AI and ML problem for 95% of the people out there, right?
The accelerate is key, right? So I think Pfizer did a great job, obviously, during the pandemic to say, hey, a vaccine which typically takes 5 to 10 years to come out, they were able to launch it in 10 months, right? It was like
Yeah.
ridiculous. Well, and now they're like, hey, why can't we do it for every drug, right? Why can't the next oncology cancer drug, why can't the next set of vaccines, why can't we speed up drug devs, right? So
Yeah.
really now looking at every part of your value chain, whether it's clinical trial, whether it's the early discovery, whether it's regulatory
Yeah.
filing, whether it's supply chain manufacturing, whether it's the commercial process, whether it's our medical team giving information to people, right? It's like they're looking at every part of the value chain and saying, hey, where can we speed this up? Where can AI come and help make it better, make the process better and the process faster? So I think really that acceleration is where the value is, right? Is, I think I'll give another example from marketing world, right? We had then globally something like 75 marketing agencies which took the global marketing content and said, hey, we're going to convert this into 100 different languages, right? The same marketing content we can now localize it for China or Brazil, etc. But Portuguese versus Mandarin versus
I know
whatever.
exactly where this is going, but keep going.
And now, as you can imagine, right, on the product master, right, we have the globally local language. This is the brand name instead. Now we can just point a LLM to that and say, hey, here's a template and LLM, like create like 75 versions of the same content in different languages locally. We can say, hey, like the local person, right? You still need to look at it. We don't want to just send it out, right? But there's always a review, but like so much faster. And so that's
Yeah.
a good case, right? Of
So much faster that it takes 5 minutes rather than months.
and like cheaper.
You know,
You're not paying like
cheaper.
25 local agencies to like localize content.
Yeah.
You can basically say, hey, the local person, marketing
Mhm.
person, the country just review the document, right? And help can convert it for you, right? So I think in my part is not the LLM part. My part is the value add of, hey, saying, I know that in this country, this drug is this local label, right? So my part is really just the foundational data saying, here's the data or the data which you can use to enable.
I've been using localized, specialized large language models to help me get better at my own job. And it has been incredible. I think I want to write a blog post about it at some point, but you could load in all these research papers of things that would take you days or weeks to comprehend and understand. And you can give the context of who you are as an individual, what your goals are, and start to ask based on the research, which one of these are important and how can that technology accelerate your own objectives? And it is like such a different way of looking at research and how you can accelerate moving through content that a lot of these research papers are really dense. They take you a ton of time to fully comprehend, and you don't necessarily need to do that to the same degree anymore. If you don't have the time, you can really isolate and create more value out of that same time by telling an LLM to help you align which things are more important for you to investigate.
I would
I've
love to
just
read
seen,
that blog post, so please do work on that.
yeah, absolutely. There's just so many ways like that, but they're not huge efficiency gains. It's not transforming the way I learn or anything like that, but it is helping really accelerate. Like I had an expert working next to me saying, no, you don't want to look at that. Look at this, right? Look at this form of research. It'll be better for you. Spend your time there. So it's just incredible. I think that we're going to see so much more coming, even at Databricks internally. We have LLMs that we use to help us learn about our products. There's just so many products and so much complexity in each product that you can use LLMs that have essentially scraped every bit of Jira and GitHub and documentation to help synthesize when you're looking for an answer that a customer like Pfizer comes to you and says, hey, I'm having trouble with this. Instead of having to spend 3 days researching it, you can go back and maybe cut that down to half a day to come back with a solution. It's pretty cool. It's amazing how this is going to change the world, especially in something as complex as drug discovery, where you've got such a complex ecosystem to get something from an idea or proof point to a finalized product.
Absolutely.
So just to sum all this up, or at least parting thoughts, anything, what are you looking at for the future, Nishith, at Pfizer and what your team is doing? What are you thinking about?
So I would say, at least as a data horizontal, right, and as a foundational kind of data element, a partner to business and partner to AI and analytics teams, right? It's really all about our vision is, hey, how do we make data AI ready? How do we make data fair? I don't know if you heard fair, but it's a pharma R&D concept. Fair is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And then we have fair plus, right? So it's trust and data quality and all the other part of it, right? Really findable, right? So it's really, how do we make sure, hey, all the data in data bricks is in the Unity catalog and we link that to Calibra and there's one UI where it's one global marketplace and the Snowflake data is there and the Redshift data is there and all the other Oracle or whatever, and unstructured data, right? All of that we can find in one place. Accessible, obviously, is like now that once you find it, how do you get access to it? How do you have the right privacy policies and encryption and the right people can get right access to the right data? So all the standards policies around that. Interoperable, you guys come from the MDM world, right? That's super important, right? And probably the most important part of all of this is you can have all the data silos, and if it doesn't talk to each other, it doesn't help. So structured M or DM, yes, harmonized and unstructured data, tagging, interlinking, creating a graph, which can be, and then reusable, right? Obviously would be, okay, like now we build a data product or analytics product. How can we basically make it available to everybody? They can use it, right? Creating the data mesh or data fabric or whatever term of the day, but essentially like creating which, you have trusted data with APIs or specific things which you have. It's governed. It's essentially managed by somebody, and there's owner. and the ownership is important. Just document it. And people can now use it. That's our goal is how do you make data AI ready? How do you make it fair? How do you bring all these different groups together? And I think previously at Pfizer, clinical group worked with clinical data, the sales marketing group with the marketing data, the medical group with medical data. And now you can see there's many use cases coming there. Some of it over there, but now a lot more, right? And we have a lot of, hey, like just now, we're trying to get clinical trial data in our data breaks to merge with the commercial in Snowflake to help support our chief medical officer and chief medical affairs officer and medical analytics team. And they have their own use cases. And we need all this data to come together.
Yeah.
It's lake to lake integration. It's, it's cataloged here. We have lineage, right? Like now we can show that. We can show the power of it. It's easy. It's trusted. So speeding up kind of ability to do new analytics, right? Which, previously like the team in chief medical would have never ever spoken with the team in clinical. Right? They wouldn't even know what data is available. Now it's all good. You can see what data is there immediately.
That federation is key. And I think that is the future
Yep.
of all large enterprises. The catalog has become much more than just a structured data set that a few backhouse people use. Everybody in the organization is using it. Everyone's talking about it.
And then the federated, like just using the word, right? Like we can't even have one big data governance council, right? It's just too much data. But we have federated governance where we're like, hey, like there's a governance council, but there's multiple like silos, right? I don't know if it's silos, but multiple governance councils, and maybe we have a federated way where, hey, if let's say commercial and medical need to talk together, right? Like we can have that small subcommittee, or clinical research and patient services need to talk, right? For real world data, we can have a spin up like a working group, right? But the federated governance is important. Federated knowledge graphs, the other thing which we're trying to do, right? Is not only like we obviously have federated MDM, right? There's a clinical MDM, there's contracting MDM, I have my enterprise MDM, and we have SAP, which is a supply chain manufacturing SAP MDM, and those are like four big MDM we have, and they are connected together from a federated perspective. That's just MDM. But now we have a knowledge graph for oncology, a knowledge graph for clinical trial, a knowledge graph for like internal medicine research and all that. And we're like, hey, all of these are genes, they have studies, they have products, we have common data elements. We now creating a semantic on top of that, have a federated graph and being able
Love
to
it.
ask questions to that federated graph. And he'll create the Sparkle or GraphQL or whatever it is, cipher for the different graphs and distribute that data, pull it back together. But it's very difficult to get 10 different teams to work together. But if you have the semantic, that's powerful.
And it's what's going to differentiate. It's what's going to differentiate companies like yours in the future, I think, is having that unified view. Everything from this point moving forward, you're going to build off of it, right? And thank you so much for sharing your insights today. Really appreciate your time. This was a great talk. I think we'll definitely ask you back at some point if you're interested.
Of course,
there's
it's
so
been
much
a pleasure.
more.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
We kind of see you guys. We can have some beers. So sometimes
For sure. We love beers.
let me know that the Databricks conference coming if you're going to be there.
Oh yeah, there is a Data and AI Summit. Would love to have you. And if you send me your rep, we'll see what we can do. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another Data Hurdles. I'm Chris Detzel, and don't forget to rate and review us. And
I'm Michael Burke. Thanks for tuning in.
thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.